Hello and welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich and this is your daily dose of F1 news. Today we're going to be speaking about how Williams were wrong about Logan Sargeant, further miscommunications at Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. It just carries on. And then we'll be talking about Lewis Hamilton telling Mercedes they need to change the W14 and why. But I just thought I'd bring to you that I did a poll yesterday leading on, or rather prompted by yesterday morning's show. And over in the community tab here on YouTube, I do put polls on there and things that you guys can get involved in and comment on. And the question was, will Lando Norris leave McLaren before the end of his contract? If yes, where to? And 63% of people think that Lando Norris will leave McLaren before the end of his contract. And that's really, really interesting. The unfortunate thing is, even with 48 votes, the only comment really was, where would he go? So unfortunately, 48 people responded and said yes, he would leave before the end of his contract, but no one really offered any input as to where they think he would go. And while that's not the subject of today, do keep an eye out on the community tab here on YouTube for polls and things like that. But let's get into the first story of the day. Please do make sure you're hitting that like on the stream and also subscribing down below. Logan Sargeant. So there's a little bit of a story, really, that has sort of come out, but it's more really James Vowles admitting about being wrong, really, about Logan Sargeant. And I'm probably going to be in that camp as well, because I was pretty savage in my dismissal of Logan Sargeant before the season. I didn't think he would be as slow as Latifi, but I really didn't expect him to do anything. I thought he would be off the back and nowhere near. And you know, I said at the time, if I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. And so far, first two races, I think he's done really, really well. But James Vowles said from the first laps of testing, immediately you could see that the pace was there. I was a little bit reticent in wondering whether it would take him a little bit of time to get used to it. The second aspect is Bahrain is his first Grand Prix. The pressure on your shoulders is enormous, and he took it in his stride. He was 3 wide through turn 1. Normally in your rookie race, that ends up in disaster, and he just dealt with it with enormous amounts of maturity. From then onwards, and I'm sure as you'll see throughout the year, he'll step forward. And he says that his feedback has been very, very good. He has this young, fiery passion that comes with things. He wants every millisecond you can get out of that car. And it's good to hear, isn't it? It's good to hear because, well, like John said, in the pre-season prediction show, I was savage about him. And that's the good thing about doing a pre-season prediction show, because what I'll do at the end of this year, at the end of the season, I'll have John and Harry over again, and we'll revisit what we thought and what actually came to pass. And I think that'll be a good video or a good show, however we do it, whether we do it live or whether we do it... I think that'd be a good one to do live, to be honest. I think that'd be a good one to do live, because I think there'll be certain aspects, definitely me, probably John and Harry as well, where people are just like, you actually thought that? Why are we even watching your content? You know. But Vowles goes on to say, my path with Logan actually crossed several years ago. He came to Mercedes as a simulator evaluation driver, and I was interested in looking at him because he had performance, especially when you go back to his Formula 3 performance in an average team. He was there with Oscar, and I rate Oscar so highly. At the time, in Mercedes, we had a good suite of drivers, so this is where my relationship with him ended. Then, prior to me arriving at Williams, Williams funded, it's very important to state this, his Formula 2 career, so he is now salaried as a professional driver. Williams funded him because they had a deep belief that he was the real deal. So, it's a driver that Mercedes had in as an evaluation driver. But Mercedes had a good bunch of young drivers already, so they sort of overlooked him. But I didn't actually realise that Williams had funded his career in Formula 2. I actually didn't realise that until I've just read that. But he won't be the only one. They'll probably have a couple of drivers that they're funding, right? But yeah, I didn't know that was a thing until now. You normally get, academy drivers and things, but I didn't think that it was like fully funded. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's pretty cool, to be honest. There's a possibility the F1 cars just really suit him, and it's that chance, take it or lose it. Yeah. Fair play to him. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes in Australia for sure. I'll be keeping an eye on him. But Vowles goes on to say even more. My reticence came from the fact that prior to that F2 season, it was very difficult to really judge him. But I have to say, now he's been in the car, I now have the ability to look at his data, and he is here on merit. As a result of Williams investing correctly in him, he's now a professional driver and deserving driver on the grid at the same time. So it just shows you that in my previous life, I was wrong and Williams were right. I like that. I like it when someone can... I mean, in effect, being the boss of Williams is also complimenting his current team, but I like it when a person can literally say I was wrong. I think it shows a maturity and things like that. I really like that from a person. So just good comments there about Logan Sargeant. Arctic says, I'll be interested to see how he handles it when pressure for points comes along. That'll really be a test of the man. Yeah, will it be this season? I don't know. But I think you could see him in the upper teens of positions quite often, potentially, especially on the day for Williams. But yeah, just some nice words coming out of Williams and James Vowles there. Second story. Now, we have... do you think Logan might be a future champ? I think that's a bit far. No, not right now. I think there are many drivers ahead of him. I think while just to sort of dally on this point a little bit, I think when you look at Logan Sargeant, you still have to look at Norris, Leclerc, still Max. You have to look at who else? George Russell, Oscar Piastri. There are tons ahead of him, in my opinion. But he's impressed me so far. Second story, Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, the main problem that they had last season, and the reason pretty much publicly why Binotto seemed to get the boot was because of communication. As I pause, forgetting it's because I was reading chat. Was because of communication, and Ferrari and Fred Vasseur have admitted it's continuing. Now, look, regular viewers will know that I always have been of the opinion that they got rid of Binotto a season early, and I can't help but feel like if a miscommunication was reported under Binotto, if Binotto was still the boss now and a miscommunication happened, I can't help but feel it would be reported in a much stronger manner than this is, because this was only one article that I found which is relating to it. And while it might seem a small thing, it was only a collection of small things, really, that added up to big things for Binotto's time in charge. And this was all to do with when Leclerc was told to push, but he was told to push really too late. And this was when his engineer under the safety car came over and said that he needed to push to safety car, or push from safety car line 1. And Leclerc, having had, I think it was Lewis Hamilton came out in front of him, said, you need to tell me that before. And the engineer apologised, and Leclerc, rather flustered, said, no, but come on. And I can't help but feel that the issues that we were seeing are still there, aren't they? Because this is exactly the type of thing people were absolutely wrecking Ferrari for last season, absolutely wrecking them for. And, you know, Vasseur acknowledged that this had not been a good call. He says, yes, it was not a good call. It is like it is. It's not the main issue, and I think the mistake, it would be a mistake from our side to focus on it. I don't want to say it's details. It was a miscommunication, and we will have to speak to fix it. It's not the main issue at all over the weekend. While I do agree that it's not the main issue over the weekend, who could have said this line? Who could have said this line? It's not the main issue, and I think it would be a mistake from our side to focus on it. Communication, that is. That sounds like, I really like Fred a lot, but that sounds like it's straight out of the Binotto handbook. And I'm not being funny. I remember last season that Binotto said nearly exactly the same thing. He said nearly exactly the same thing, and everyone went in on him hard, saying, what are you talking about? You're not going to focus on the issue. It's just ignoring that Ferrari have got issues. But I find it really odd that this is only... I think it shows you just to sort of segue a little bit, I think it shows you the impact of broadcasters like Sky Sports and things like that, right? When they're pushing an angle, you know what I mean? Because nearly word for word, Vasseur said the same thing now, and nobody's picking up on it. Last season, Binotto said it, and it was all over Sky Sports and wherever. Autosport and everything. Binotto doesn't think it's an issue. And I think exactly the opposite of what he's just said. You have to get... The communication needs to be concise, precise, and immediate, doesn't it? In Formula One. It just does. And I just find it interesting, really, that nobody's reporting on this. Yet we collectively hung Binotto out to dry last season. Fred comments and engagement. Well, at the minute, right, if things carry on as they are, this will be. I think, like you just said, because of the engagement, I reckon later in the season, if it carries on going suboptimally for Ferrari, this kind of stuff will make headlines. He's supposed to be strategist, but how can you strategize when Ferrari look to be tearing through tyres? Staff there seemed so old school, no real want to change. This is the thing, and it's something I've been on about with, it's one of the things I've been saying, Nick, for a while now, that it just seems like their issues are, how can I put this? To me, obviously, from the outside, people do need to change and personnel need to change, but to me, I always thought it was extremely simplistic analysis, I really did, to sack Binotto and sack the strategist. Because while I understand Binotto was sort of the figurehead and probably had to go, I do concede that, there are hundreds of people involved. And to say he was the problem, and even the chief strategist, it's still simplistic to say the chief strategist was the problem. What the problem probably is more of a cultural and procedural problem, and their chain of command and how they make their choices and who those choices have to go through. That's probably the bigger issue, and that's what I'd be looking at if I was Fred Vasseur. I'd be looking at who are the stakeholders in these choices, how quickly can we make these choices, and do these peripheral people need to be involved in these choices, or shall we empower these individuals' autonomy on these choices? And I feel like Ferrari, almost like there's too much red tape. So the call, because the call to Leclerc came too late, right? So that's almost like the strategist or the engineer, whoever makes the call, said, I want to do this. And then it had to go through these checks up and down the chain of command before someone went, send the command. Do you know what I mean? Instead of them literally thinking, I need to tell him this is the strat, push from safety car line 1, go. And Leclerc just going, okay. It's like it's like there's steps there that just slow it all down. Like Red Bull, I've said this for years now. Red Bull, how they handle pit strategy and stuff seems to be so dynamic and agile and lightweight. It's like Horner and whoever have said, you are our strategist. If you make the call, make the call. You do it, make it, and it's done, and we'll deal with it afterwards, whether it's right or wrong. But to me, so many times almost forever, Red Bull, it seems like they can make a call like that and be so reactive and quick to do that. Whereas you see Ferrari, like they have to go through a committee, and Mercedes, on the other hand, look like they have to check all of their simulations before they'll commit to something. And if you've watched that kind of I feel like that's a really fair sort of observation of them. It's like, yeah, that is it. It's like Red Bull make the call, Ferrari go through 20 people, and Mercedes fire up their 400 simulations to measure out the probability of safety cars further and blah, 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 blah. And they're also fairly slow to react, or have been. And that's just my general observation. I'd love to know your opinions on that, whether you agree with what I've just said or not, to be honest. Red Bull have a very, very efficient strategy system, which they obviously trust. And that's what I'd be looking at. If I was Ferrari, I would really be looking at who do we need to empower. Let's look at these processes and let's get rid of all these steps. It needs to be like lean and efficient and quick. And if the call's wrong, honestly, you have to own it. But this is the thing as well. If I was like a really high up person at Ferrari, I'd be saying, we need to change, so change it. Make it so you can make these choices quicker. And don't worry about saving face. If we mess up, we mess up. That's going to happen in changing these processes. But make the change. And if we look silly, we look silly 3 or 4 times. But it will be better in the end, Horner does seem to let staff own their calls, but at the same time defends them if it goes wrong. But they also seem to learn with what they do. Yeah, they seem to have. They do. You're right, Nick. They seem to have, from the outside, Red Bull seem to have this whole. I hate to use the term, but they seem to have a very effective lessons learned like strategy, where if something goes wrong, they seem to really actually look inwardly and solve it, because I'm trying to think of repeated errors at Red Bull. They seem to have that down. If anyone's got any, then please, I'm trying to think. But then again, the other season, I remember John specifically speaking with John, and it seemed like every other race, there weren't Ferrari level of daftness, but Merc just slow to react. No, but I hate it. Sounds buzzy, Dan. That's why I don't like it. I don't like terms like that. It's like saying touch base. Touch base. We'll touch base on that. Face to face. That's why I don't like it. Just that. I wish there was a better term, because a lot of people use lessons learned as an excuse to have a meeting that actually provides nothing, in my experience. Ferrari send the pigeon back to Maranello. Yeah. You've got to be, Dan can tell that Dan works in those kinds of areas. Look at that, all of them. You've got to be dynamic in the lessons learned in order to diversify the synergies. Go on, lad, all the buzz. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Sai thinks Horner and Toto have control over their team and their staffs, but Fred doesn't. I can't agree with that, Sai, to be honest. Good morning. How are we doing? But there we are. That's the point of Ferrari there. And I just thought it would be fun to bring that up, really. And just sort of the double standard that I like to point out, that Fred Vasseur makes a Binotto statement, no one picks up on it, but Binotto got absolutely slaughtered for it last season. But here we are. Now, this is sort of the conversation. I'm kind of enjoying doing this with the morning show, because not every morning is it news, but I like to have a chat about Formula One every day. Hence the channel. So I'm bringing the news, or what I think is the news, and then I'll bring you sort of some quotes maybe to have a conversation. Now, this is about the conversation. Now, we know things are happening at the Mercedes. We know that they are finding, what they say, huge chunks of pace back at the wind tunnel, with George Russell saying they found more time in a week than they have in the entire winter back at the wind tunnel, which for me, as a Formula One fan, is fantastic, because it brings another team potentially into the battle. Though Toto Wolff did offer caution to anyone who's a Mercedes fan, saying it would be stupid, that's a quote, it would be stupid to think they will be fighting for a title. And I think this is due to the fact what they're seeing now in the wind tunnel is months, a couple of months, probably 3 months maybe, from the car, because it has to go through the wind tunnel, then they have to iterate the design, then they have to actually manufacture it. And manufacturing front wings and floors, and it's not the work of a moment. And if they're finding chunks of time and it is a different concept, then you're looking at, you're looking at front wing, you're looking at suspension arms, you're looking at floor fences, side pods, rear diffuser, rear brake ducts, rear wing. There's so much there that they have to bring. So they are far away, but it's encouraging for both Mercedes and Formula One fans. And we can explain and expand on it a little bit. So it's what they've said is that they needed the Bahrain test and the Bahrain Grand Prix to prove that there was or wasn't a correlation, or to prove that they had failed, and it proved that they failed. So the correlation, which I've explained loads of times on the channel now, all it really needs is the data going in the same direction. So say Mercedes put massive side pods on, like we've not seen so far, right? Just huge side pods, just massive side pods, something insane, right? And they put them on the car in the wind tunnel and they go, oh wow, this is really good in CFD and in the wind tunnel. Let's go to track. Now, if on track, the performance goes down, but in the wind tunnel it goes up, there's no correlation. The numbers don't need to be exact, but there's no correlation. But so long as they go, right, we've put this new floor in the wind tunnel, and now we've tested it on track, and the numbers are trending like in the same direction, then that's a correlation, and they can go, okay, this is an avenue we need to follow. The problem comes, as has been the issue at Mercedes, where the numbers aren't going in the same direction. I know that sounds really obvious, but it's not like an exact science. It's not like you go, oh, we're going to get 3 points of downforce here, and then that's exactly what you get on track. And this has been sort of highlighted with McLaren. Their new wind tunnels coming online in a couple of months at McLaren, and they're saying it's going to take like 6 months to dial in, to configure it, and to get it right. So it takes time. But anyway, there are some quotes here from Lewis Hamilton that I would just bring you. I don't think they're particularly new quotes or anything like that. But he said after the race, we're a long way down on downforce, so we've got to pick up the rear end downforce particularly, which is completely evident. And I said this through that 22-23 section. People were saying he's fighting the front. He wasn't fighting the front. It was all the rear. He was turning in, and as he was turning in, he just felt the looseness, the vagueness at the rear of the car, and had to give it a bit of oversteer, which made it look like he was having 2 bites of the corner, but he wasn't. He just had no confidence in the rear. The more rear we gain, the more stable the rear becomes, the more confident I'll be to attack. But I think in general, just this car. Even if we do change that, there's a specific thing with something on the car that I've never had before. It's a position I've not had in previous cars. For me, it's the thing making me uncomfortable. I've just got to work hard to make sure it's changed. It's on a knife edge when you're above about 95%, but when you're in a race stint, it's much more controllable and predictable. I still don't have the confidence in the race, but I'm doing the best I can with it. And this is the thing, and I feel like it might be a hard thing to understand if someone's never driven a car in anger, like for real. And I think, honestly, sim racing does a brilliant job of showing exactly what the issue Lewis Hamilton has. The problem Hamilton has, especially on a circuit like Jeddah, if he has no rear downforce or feels like it's on a knife edge, especially on quick laps, when you turn in and the rear's feeling very vague, the difference between getting round the corner extremely fast and ending up in a huge accident with the rear of the car destroyed in a wall is tiny. It's just a tiny little area of handling, and it would be very simplistic to say, well, George Russell can do it. Well, everyone's unique and everyone has different driving styles. Maybe Lewis Hamilton likes a very balanced car. Quite famously, Jenson Button, he absolutely loved a very neutral car, like really, really neutral. He didn't want it understeering or oversteering. He just wanted it. He just wanted balance back to front. Whereas you've got other drivers who really like a loose rear end on the car. I think Kimi Räikkönen was one of those who really liked a loose rear, and Fernando Alonso is one who's tended to like an understeering car throughout his career, so that he can be really aggressive on the front end, and he can really be aggressive with the wheel and how he chucks the car about. That's always been a stylistic thing, and it's all that Huel, John. But I just thought it was interesting to bring you guys that information from Lewis Hamilton. I think it's in Mercedes' interests to get the rear sorted on that car because, because if you can get George and Lewis firing, like the issues that Lewis Hamilton is saying will only make George Russell faster, the more confidence any driver really, even to have a loose rear end, you have to have confidence in what it's going to do. Otherwise, it's really hard to drive it anyway, you know? So, for the same reasons as I explained. So, hopefully, for Formula One fans, for Mercedes fans, Mercedes can get a handle on that rear end issue, and that they really are seeing big improvements in the wind tunnel and CFD. It'd be great to see. But there we are. That is TSK F1 on this. Is it Wednesday already? I think it is. Blooming heck, Wednesday already. That's TSK F1 this Wednesday morning. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. It's not too late to hit that sub button down below and also like the stream. You may have to close the chat in order to do so, but it does help lots and lots. I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning with Thursday's news show. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.